The Old Testament lesson this morning is from Ezekiel, chapter 47, verses 1 to 12. Here we have Ezekiel's vision of a sacred stream flowing from the entrance of the temple. Ezekiel is employing the mythological motif of the river of God and its life-giving water. As the stream enters the Dead Sea, it even gives life to the lifeless water of that lake. The idea of a life-giving stream is found in other ancient literature. Its significance here is to give hope to the Jewish people who, along with Ezekiel, were in exile in Babylon. Perhaps its meaning for us today is to see something of that life-giving stream in the life of the church, with its teachings, among which are found that central reference to Jesus Christ as the way, the truth, and the life. Perhaps the history of the church through the ages can also be seen as a stream of life flowing from God, offering the life of God within the human soul. Ezekiel 47, commencing at verse 1. Then he brought me back to the door of the temple, and behold, water was issuing from the threshold of the temple towards the east. For the temple faced east, and the water was flowing down from below the south end of the threshold of the temple, south of the altar. Then he brought me out by way of the north gate. It led me round on the outside to the outer gate that faces the east, and the water was coming out on the south side. Going on eastward with a line in his hand, the man measured 1,000 cubits, and then led me through the water, and it was ankle deep. Again, he measured 1,000. It led me through the water, and it was knee deep. Again, he measured 1,000. It led me through the waters, and it was up to the loins. Again, he measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not pass through, for the water had risen. It was deep enough to swim in, a river that could not be passed through. And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen this? Then he led me back along the bank of the river. As I went back, I saw upon the bank of the river very many trees on the one side and on the other. And he said to me, This water flows towards the eastern region and goes down into the Arabah, and then it enters the stagnant waters of the sea. The water will become fresh. And wherever the river goes, every living creature which swarms will live, and there will be very many fish. For this water goes there, that the waters of the sea may become fresh, so that everything will live where the river goes. Fishermen will stand beside the sea. From En-gedi to En-eglaim, it will be a place for the spreading of nets. Its fish will be of very many kinds, like the fish of the great sea. But its swamps and marshes will not become fresh. They are to be left for salt. And on the banks on both sides of the river, there will grow all kinds of trees for food. Their leaves will not wither, nor their fruit fail, but they will bear fresh fruit every month, because the water for them flows from the sanctuary. Their fruit will be for food, and their leaves for healing. And then the New Testament lesson is found from the book of the Revelation, chapter 21, verses 1 to 5, then verse 10, then chapter 22, verses 1 to 5. We cannot take everything we read in the book of the Revelation literally. Far from it. The previous chapter, chapter 20, the author describes the scene of the Last Judgment, all based on works. But what has happened to Paul's teaching that salvation is not from good works, but from faith in Jesus Christ? We cannot pretend that these problems do not exist. Now in chapter 21, he describes some final scene, a new heaven and a new earth. But all this is symbolism and cannot be taken literally. Just try to picture a new heaven and a new earth. What does that even mean? But as a symbol, it works with surprising power. Even more odd is his picture of the New Jerusalem dressed as a bride. Try to imagine that, and you will find that it is impossible to picture a city dressed as a bride. The passage then goes on to speak of the great river of the water of life. This reminds us both of the river of the Garden of Eden and the river of our Old Testament lesson from Ezekiel. While much in the book of the Revelation is simply wrong, the end of the world did not arrive as he clearly predicted, and Jesus did not return quickly also again as he predicted. His worldview is nonetheless inspiring. For beyond the rise and fall of empires, the purposes of God will prevail. The war between good and evil is never ceasing, but in the end, says John, the outcome is sure. This book, therefore, in spite of its many problems, presents a strange magnificence, and the powerful, if overstated imagery, still has poetic power both to move and to inspire us. As the Bible ends with this peculiar and often much mistaken book, its message nonetheless still speaks to many people. Revelation 21, starting at verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had vanished, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready like a bride adorned for her husband. I heard a loud voice proclaiming from the throne, "Now at last God has his dwelling among men. He will dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There shall be an end to death, and to mourning, and crying, and pain, for the old order has passed away." Then he who sat on the throne said, "Behold, I am making all things new." And he said to me, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Indeed, they are already fulfilled." So in the Spirit he carried me away to a great high mountain and showed me the holy city of Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God. And then he showed me the river of the water of life, sparkling like crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle of the city street. On either side of the river stood a tree of life, which yields 12 crops of fruit, one for each month of the year. The leaves of the trees serve for the healing of the nations. Every accursed thing shall disappear. The throne of God and of the Lamb will be there, and his servants shall worship him. They shall see him face to face and bear his name on their foreheads. There shall be no more night, nor will they need the light of the lamp or sun, for the Lord God will give them light, and they shall reign forevermore. Here end the readings.